On the record. Let's bring in our next potential juror, please.
Juror E7.
Please be seated. Good afternoon. You are hereafter referred to as Juror E7, and you're here this afternoon so the attorneys can ask you questions about the jury questionnaire that you filled out Monday morning, and Mr. De La Ronda is going to inquire.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
We're going to be asking you a series of questions regarding the questionnaire that you filled out in terms of this publicity, so we're limited at this stage from that aspect of it. You notated in the questionnaire in terms of what you knew about the case that there was an altercation between the two and T. Martin was shot as a result.
Yeah.
Okay. Was your basis for that information from TV or a newspaper or friends or?
That's, to my appreciation, all that is established fact.
I'm sorry, sir.
Yes. From
Was it
TV,
local news?
yes, from
Okay.
local, from national, from newspapers, from radio, talk shows, take your pick.
Gotcha, gotcha. In terms of the local news, TV, do you recall what channels it would have been on?
Gosh, it seems like most any channel you could have looked at.
Okay, all right. And then how about national news?
Again,
Okay. Do you kind of channel surf and
Yeah.
go from Fox to CNN to ABC, CBS,
from
NBC?
Fox to MSNBC, yeah.
Do you favor one more than the other in terms of where you get your news?
I think, favor?
Or one that you visit more than the others? You know, some people are partial to Fox, some people are
I
partial.
try to keep a look at all of them, but not all of them. Mainly, I have, you know, your basic local news, and then I like to watch Fox, MSNBC, and CNN.
Okay. And in terms of your, I didn't want to leave out the newspaper. Did you read any stories about this on the newspaper?
Orlando Sentinel showed, you know, that's the only newspaper that I actually look at.
Okay. And do you get a hard copy or do you go online in terms of Orlando Sentinel?
I don't get either. I just have picked up occasional copies,
Periodically.
and you would see it there.
Sure. Okay. And in terms of your exposure to what was going on in this case in terms of the media, would that have been at the time that back when it occurred, back in February?
Primarily, yes.
Okay, last year?
Yeah.
Did you keep up with the case as it was going on?
No.
Okay. In terms of your recollection, in terms of what you first heard or saw regarding the case from the media, do you recall in terms in time when this happened back in February? Do you recall, was it like a few days after or months after?
No, just within a couple of days, primarily.
All right. And was your first exposure at TV, you think?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
in terms of your first exposure, what do you recall, other than what you've noted here, what do you recall seeing or hearing about this case? I know it's been a while, so I'm just asking you what you recall.
First recall. I don't understand.
The question is, what do you remember right now in terms of the first thing you heard about this case? What do you remember, what that was?
To be strictly honest, it's hard to remember.
Okay, all right.
I can't pinpoint a specific.
Sure, okay, all right. Because the reason I asked, you stated that this was an altercation between the two and T. Martin was shot as a result.
Right.
Is that just from a combination of everything you were exposed to that
Right.
you came to that statement?
Right.
Okay. Now, it happened, you got exposed to it at the very beginning. Did you then follow any court proceedings in terms of what was going on regarding the case?
Minimally.
Okay.
Yes.
And did you do any research on your own on the internet about the case?
No. Not that I can remember. I may have, but nothing
Right.
specific stands
Sure.
out. It was a while ago now.
Yes, sir. In other words, like Facebook, do you have like a Facebook at all?
Yes,
Okay.
I do.
And sometimes on Facebook, apparently the news comes out too, that you can, if you want to, check Did you do any of that stuff?
No.
Okay.
No, in fact, we had conversations at the very beginning, and as soon as I found out how divisive it is, I worked in the entertainment industry to a degree, and I found that it's so politically charged that it's best to just try to avoid it at the time. So
Okay, so you made a conscious decision to
try
avoid
to
it?
stop, involving myself in conversations because you could make enemies.
Okay. And on purpose, we're calling you E7, and also we're not, at this time, referring to what your occupation is, but you mentioned you're in the entertainment business.
That as well.
And so because of that, you made a conscious decision not to be involved at all, or not to find out more than you needed to about the case?
Once I started hearing people around me get so heated about their opposition to one another or my opinion of what might have been thought at the time, it's okay.
Gotcha.
Just leave that alone.
So the people that you were having discussions about the case with, or that were commenting about the case,
Right.
might be a better way.
Right.
Those people were interjecting their opinions.
Right.
Okay. And was that on both sides of the?
Oh, yeah.
In other words, people favorable to Mr. Zimmerman and then people favorable to
Yes.
Trayvon Martin?
Yep.
Did you ever express your opinion to those people about one side or the other?
To a degree in both directions, I suppose.
Okay,
yeah.
tell me if you could a little bit about what you would have expressed to those individuals on both sides.
Well, I always kind of have a tendency to try to play devil's advocate for whatever seems to be the more forceful.
Sure.
People have a tendency to try to dominate a conversation.
Right.
And if they're trying to dominate, I have a tendency to try to, bring in a devil's advocate.
So you played the devil advocate as to both positions?
To me, it was kind of humorous, and I would
Right.
try to interject humor and
Sure.
try to diffuse conversations that
Sure.
would lead up.
And in terms of you interjecting yourself from a devil advocate standpoint, was that based on what exposure you had been exposed, what things you've been exposed to by the media in terms of what you knew about the case based on the media?
Right, and what people would be saying at that particular
Okay,
time.
all right. If we could, in terms of people that were in support of George Zimmerman, or in favor of George Zimmerman's position, what, in terms of when you played devil's advocate, what did you argue with him about? Or what did you contradict?
And I guess what would be being said at the time.
Okay, do you recall any of that at this time?
I mean, nothing that jumps right at me.
Okay, all right. Did you ever agree with any of the position of those people that were advocating on behalf of George Zimmerman?
Well, certainly, sometimes they had their points, and you have to say, okay, well, until you're there, and until you hear the absolute facts of the case, you don't know what you're talking about. And neither do you on the other side. Until you hear facts, and get the facts of exactly what occurred, you can't make that
At this time, do you recall any of the positions that those individuals were taking?
Well, yeah, I suppose. But things would change. Like, for instance, initially, there was a lot of talk like, oh, well, yeah, but there's no damage to Mr. Zimmerman. How could he have possibly been in such an altercation with no damage? And then the next thing you know, a couple of weeks later, why, there you go. Here's on the magazine or something with visual evidence of damage to Mr. Zimmerman. So, again, that just would prove my point that all these suppositions don't mean anything because you don't know what you're talking about until you get the facts.
Gotcha. And then how about on the other side, in terms of people that were in favor
Oh,
of
yeah. There's
Trayvon
all the
Martin?
noise about, well, who's doing the screaming and whatnot, what right did the person have to be there? He lives in Miami. Well, his dad. So, yeah, sure. It just depends on who the conversation was at play at the
Yes,
time.
sir. You mentioned a recording of something, correct? Did you listen to that recording?
Yeah, I've been exposed to renditions, alleged renditions of the recording.
When you say renditions, and I know you're in the entertainment business, did you listen to it on TV and you record it and then try to listen to it more?
No, never recorded it.
Enhance it in any ways?
No. I've heard what they've proposed, and I've always assumed we don't know if that's an actual recording.
I got you.
We don't know if,
And when you say you heard what they proposed, you're talking about the media, like on TV or in the news?
or other people in conversations about that.
Okay. Did you yourself listen to the actual recording yourself? Any of the recordings, if there were more than one?
I've heard, as a matter of fact, just, I guess 2 weeks ago probably, you would hear it again. Yeah.
Okay, did you come to any conclusions as a result of hearing that?
No.
Okay. Did you listen to any of the commentary in the media, both either in the local or national, people commenting about the case? And I'm talking about not just, sometimes the news, it kind of blurs into people giving opinions, but what I'm talking about is strict opinions, you know, either lawyers or other commentators talking about, well, this is what happened, or this is the law, or anything like that.
Nothing that jumps out. Most of what comes off as firm opinion generally comes from other people in the street.
Okay.
It seems to me, from
Sure.
my recollection right off the bat.
Did you hear any commentary from any of the local people here in terms of attorneys here?
No.
Whether involved in the case or anything like that? Do you recall any news conferences
Not
about
anything that
that?
I can recollect. No interviews on radio with attorneys or anything. No.
Do you recall looking at any pictures regarding the case?
Yes.
Okay, what pictures come to mind?
I've seen, for instance, Mr. Zimmerman at the police department. I've seen alleged pictures of damage to Mr. Zimmerman's head.
Okay, all right. And you understand that whatever you were exposed to in the media may or may not come out in trial?
Yes.
And the question is, can you agree to, if you were exposed to it like you've mentioned right now, can you agree if you're sitting as a juror and that comes up in your mind as you're listening to the evidence, that cannot factor into your decision? In other words, you have to disregard whatever exposure you had in media. Can you do that?
If I'm instructed?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Well, the court's going to instruct you that. Can you do that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Now, anything regarding any other photographs that come to mind right now other than the one you mentioned, Mr. Zimmerman?
No, I can't think of any other. Possibly, I don't know. I don't remember if it could be just a mental image I'm picturing of the courtyard, possibly. I may have seen, a picture of the courtyard, some concrete and grass or something.
Okay.
Or maybe I'm just imagining in my own mind what I thought when I read it.
Sure.
I don't know.
Do you remember watching any or listening to any anything about any witnesses making any kind of statements or anything? Anybody involved in the case?
Yes.
Any come to mind right now?
Yes.
Which ones?
An alleged statement, and I say alleged because I didn't hear this person speak it with their own voice, but an alleged statement from someone who was purported to be Trayvon Martin's girlfriend in an associated phone call.
Okay. Did you come to any conclusions as a result of that?
Absolutely not. I didn't hear her say anything,
Okay. Okay.
that I can remember. It's something that somebody said, she said.
Right.
He said, she said stuff. I try to okay, we'll put that back there.
Okay, all right. How about any other things come to mind in terms of statements by anybody that possibly was involved in the case?
Nothing that jumps to the fore now.
You mentioned discussions with people that you interact with,
Yeah.
right? How about with anybody else that family or, I'm assuming the people you interact with is at work, also and friends, is that correct?
Right, but there really has been minimal, if anything, in the way of like family discussions.
Okay, so no discussions with family about the case. Did you visit any kind of the websites, if there are any dedicated to one side or the other?
No.
And I gather when you filled out the questionnaire, you stated, you were asked obviously whether you had formed an opinion, and you stated you had not. When I say formed an opinion as to the guilt or innocence of the defendant, Mr. Zimmerman,
I don't
is
see
that
how
correct?
one could reasonably. No, I haven't.
One of the other areas that this questionnaire covers is the dedication or time that you would have to, if you were picked a juror. It's unknown right now how long, but it could be conceivably anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. It may be less, but the range may be that. And I'm assuming you filled out that would not be an insurmountable hardship.
I'm currently underemployed.
Pardon me?
I'm currently underemployed.
You're
I've got some
currently
time.
underemployed?
Yes.
Okay. So from that standpoint, it would not be a hardship.
Right.
Or any other commitments that you have, in other words.
Right.
Okay. Probably have a moment ago. And finally, sir, you talked about discussions with other people in terms of people expressing their opinions. And you favored, I guess, being the devil's advocate. Is that correct? In terms of, was that always the case, or did you at some point take a position?
No, I just, when it gets heated,
Yes, sir.
For instance, I'm a painter, and I might have been working at a given restaurant, and conversations would erupt, and I'd hear people talking and going back and forth, and then the heat would start to generate, and then I would try to grab the weaker side and shoot humor at the stronger side.
So you don't mind interjecting yourself in those discussions and trying to, I guess...
Especially when I think they've gone way overboard with their opinion. Right.
Would you also at the same time have the ability to, without interjecting yourself, listen to what is being said completely, and then at the very end come to a conclusion? In other words, the role of a juror, when you're sitting as a juror, you can't say, hold on, I want to challenge that. You got to listen to all the evidence and evaluate what is being said, and then apply your God-given common sense, but also the law the judge will give you to the evidence that's being presented. Would you be able to do that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to form an opinion unless I had all the potential relevant information possible.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. West.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Don West, and I'm an attorney along with Mark O'Mara, counsel for George Zimmerman. I take it you recognize him.
I've seen him on TV.
In fact, what was your first reaction? Talking about the publicity and the media attention this case got. What was your first reaction or impression when you heard this story unfold?
That would be rather difficult because it's been so long. What would I have felt in the very first instance when the information first was presented to the public?
Well, let me ask you this. Are you generally familiar from the media with the timeline of the case?
Generally.
As a reference point, February 26, 2012 was the night of the shooting. Okay? And then I thought you said within a couple of days it kind of got your attention.
Yeah, well, initially it was like it didn't. I think it took a couple of days for it to hit the news in the first place, didn't it?
Do you know why it hit the news? Why it became such a big story?
Yeah, I think I do. I think somebody had started making a lot of noise because Mr. Zimmerman hadn't been arrested.
Did you learn that through the media?
Yeah.
And based upon that, is that what you think sort of got this thing going?
Into the hubbub that it is?
Right.
Probably.
Okay. So
maybe the hype. Not the lack of arrest, but the hype.
So what was your reaction when you started hearing these stories unfold about February 26th on, that he hadn't been arrested, for example? Did you have a reaction to that?
Well, I suppose, I would have thought, if arrest was due, there would have been an arrest made.
And knowing from the media that there wasn't, what did you think about that?
Well, I guess that's when I started to get interested a little bit. So it took, like I say, a few days in the first place to even really draw an interest, because at first there was really not much said. Next thing you know, there's a whole lot of talking. And what's this about? And then you start to read up, and then the next thing you know, it's headlines.
Well, we're not talking about the evidence of the case today.
Correct.
We're just talking about information prospective jurors may have before, as they come in the door here.
Oh, yes.
So we're just looking for, honest opinions and sort of feelings, impressions, opinions that sort of thing about the case. So what was your reaction, your opinion, when you realized that there had been a delay in an arrest? Did you think
Well,
that
again, like I said, I thought initially would have been, if there hasn't been an arrest, there's probably a reason why.
Did you try to figure out what that reason was?
Well, not until a lot more noise was made about it. Now I'm thinking we're into, what, maybe a month and a half before, when it really started getting loud, then yeah, it would draw my attention because I do have a tendency to try to keep up with the news a little bit, and when something really overwhelms the airwaves, I guess you can't miss it, can you? So then you've got opinions on both sides about why there's not an arrest.
Well, what were the opinions that were expressed to you about that?
Nothing directly to me. It would be, like I say, I would watch. I try to do my best to try to keep an even balance of. I don't believe in one network bringing a fair and balance. I think to get a balance, you want to start from the outside and kind of work your way toward the center. So you've got one network, seemingly, that wants to carry a there wasn't an arrest for this reason. And then another network that says, well, there wasn't an arrest for this reason. See what I'm saying?
And what did you make of that? Did you ever form an opinion yourself whether or not there should have been an arrest? Based upon what you've been hearing?
Over time?
No, over the first month.
Well, my curiosity would get piqued. I guess I assumed if somebody shoots somebody, shouldn't there be it? Well, maybe not. No, I mean, if somebody's perfectly within their rights to defend themselves.
The question that I was trying to focus on, and I understand it sounds like you were conflicted. That you didn't know.
Because I'm not, one to take what any given channel tells me as gospel. They don't know the facts.
Well, what was your thinking at that point? Did you form an opinion yourself whether or not Mr. Zimmerman should have been arrested?
Over time?
Within the first,
no.
Within the first month or so?
I would say no.
That you did not form an opinion?
No, not within the first
You heard other people expressing opinions?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
But you were not taking a position yourself?
No, because I knew I didn't have enough information.
Is that the way you are? You're kind of cautious? Is that what you're saying, that you don't weigh in on something until you're satisfied you have all the information?
Unless somebody, if in a way of a personal conversation with other people, or my clear own personal understanding.
We're really talking about what you thought about this case, what you think your ability would be to consider evidence or information you may have heard outside the courtroom and separate that from evidence you might hear inside the courtroom. So I'm trying to get a handle on whether you ever formed an opinion yourself.
Ever?
I wasn't quite finished with the question.
I'm sorry.
Whether you ever formed an opinion or even expressed an opinion about George Zimmerman's guilt or whether or not he should have been arrested.
I've never formed or expressed an opinion that I can remember. I can't see myself having done that. About his guilt, no. About whether he should have been arrested, eventually, yes. I came to a conclusion whether I thought he should have been arrested, but that was, again, based on what I knew to be a lack of information.
When do you think, what was your opinion that you finally reached whether or not he should have been arrested?
Eventually, I concluded for myself, although, with the limited information that I had, that he probably should have been arrested, and that this should be where it is now.
When do you think you reached that opinion?
That probably took a couple months. Because, I didn't glue myself to what was going on with that. There was other things in my life, too, So over time, you keep hearing about it, and actually concern yourself with it to find, okay, now I'm curious, let's find out this. Oh, here comes another one's opinion. All all right, let's put that aside then.
What did you learn in the media that made you think that he should be arrested?
That he should have been arrested?
Right. Now, let me just be more clear. I take it that you know he wasn't arrested immediately.
Correct.
And that he was arrested sometime later.
Yes.
And at some point later, you decided, based upon the information you had, that that was the right decision? That he should have been arrested?
By half of that is by the very virtue that he was arrested. That tells me, well, then why wasn't he arrested in the first place?
Well, let me ask you that. Do you have any idea why he wasn't arrested in the first place, based upon what you've heard in the media?
No. Anything along those lines would be sheer speculation. Would anything direct me toward that? Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
Well, for example, were you questioning the motives of the Sanford Police Department?
I suppose I may have heard that being done.
Mm-hmm. Was that an issue for you, that you questioned the motives of the Sanford Police Department?
Not until after he was arrested. Then I had to think, well, why wasn't he arrested in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying. It didn't really get all that interesting for a long time. And a lot of different events had to unfold, and now that just leaves me in a whole different, where this is concerned, now that I've given it thought over the last few days, when I realized that I could be a prospective juror and had to honestly, in my own head and heart, consider the thing very seriously. I had to think, well, how do I come to this conclusion? I don't know the facts. So I'm just going to put it all off the table. If I'm going to wind up being a juror, then I'll find out the facts and I'll be able to run a reasonable process through my head that'll bring me to reasonable conclusions. That because of the importance of that consideration, I ought to just not even bother with at this point. If I'm to know the facts, then you're going to present me the facts. If I'm not, I won't be sitting here. And then I can go back to any speculation I like.
Mm-hmm. Were you aware from the media of the community's reaction?
Oh, yeah.
What did you know about that?
Well, it got just as divided here as MSNBC is from Fox News. In our community, I could be right down the street here in Lake Mary painting the inside of a building, and half the day the conversation would come. Now this is months back. The conversations would come up that people would flare at each other in this town.
Were you tuned in to any rallies, demonstrations, protests?
No.
You weren't paying attention to the news?
Never went to any of those. Never, looked for them on the internet sites or anything like that.
Never attended any of those events?
Nope.
Never signed a petition?
Absolutely not.
Or donated money?
Nope.
Did you ever do anything to support that cause, if you will? And I don't mean to describe it in a way that you don't understand, but you know what if I say the cause, the idea that George Zimmerman wasn't arrested and people were...
Oh, no. No.
That you didn't actively support that cause in any way?
His arrest?
Correct.
No. Because I wouldn't have known. I mean, why would I if I didn't understand the facts? Maybe he didn't deserve to be here. In fact, again, like I said, I was surprised, and that was the only thing that made me question the Sanford Police Department, was that he finally did get arrested. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even questioned the Sanford Police Department. All that does is tell me, okay, well, what went wrong initially then?
Well, that he got arrested finally. Mm-hmm. Did that mean to you that he must probably...
Mr. West interjecting, I would ask that he just ask me what it meant, as opposed to Mr. West interjecting. What he please.
Okay, can you rephrase your question, please?
that when George Zimmerman got arrested, did that mean anything to you about the whether or not he should have been arrested earlier? I know that sounds convoluted. You know what I'm getting at?
No, I think I've already made that clear, though. When he finally did get arrested, all that brought to mind was, well, then, what took so long? Why wasn't he arrested in the first place? You would think somebody shoots somebody, and a judge is going to want to hear why. So to me, that's a snapper.
Did you consider then that the Sanford Police Department wasn't doing their job? If they didn't arrest him that night or soon thereafter?
Not until he did eventually get arrested. Then I considered that as a possibility, and I thought, well, wait a minute now. I'm not wearing that badge either. I'm not in that room either. And I don't know why he didn't, they obviously know more than I do about. They felt they had good reason not to arrest.
So that's really my thought. You knew that the arrest hadn't taken place, and were you in any way critical of the Sanford Police Department for not making the arrest, in your mind?
No, only for a glimpse when he first got arrested. That struck me off. Well, why didn't this happen in the first place?
Do you know when he was arrested? The date or?
No. I know it did take a while. I think it was like, a month, maybe a month and a half or something after the incident. That's my best ballpark estimation of a recollection.
So it wasn't until after Mr. Zimmerman got arrested that it made you, I guess I'm missing that point. So some time happens. We go from February 26th to the date when he's arrested. And we know that was some matter of weeks, right? So when you learned he was arrested, what was your thinking about what had happened before?
What aspect of what happened before?
Well, are you saying that proves that he should have been arrested earlier?
That was my initial sense. But then I thought, no, wait a second now. You're not wearing a badge. You're not in that police department. You don't know why he wasn't arrested. Maybe they had reason.
Okay. So you were still...
it wasn't my judgment to make. Yeah.
Were you still open-minded on the issue?
Of course.
Were you still open-minded on the issue of whether George Zimmerman was guilty?
Of course. You'd have to be, wouldn't you?
That's why we're here, not making accusations about individuals, but the whole idea that there's been this flood of information. And has it affected you in any way at all?
Has it affected me?
Right. Do you think this flood of information has affected you in any way in your ability to be fair and impartial?
No.
Has it ever caused you to form an opinion about the guilt or innocence of George Zimmerman?
It has caused me to give weight to that potential until I have to look back and realize that I don't have near the facts necessary to make such a judgment, to form such an opinion. I'd need more facts. That's what I would always come to the conclusion.
Have you ever considered whether the evidence supports self-defense or is against self-defense from what you know?
I don't know what the evidence is. Isn't that what we're here to
That was
determine?
my bad choice of words. The information that you've received generally out there.
Yeah,
Have
I
you
couldn't
formed
form
any
it.
impression or opinion as to whether it was
Not
self-defense,
really, because it's not evidence.
wasn't self-defense, or no, you don't have any view at all on that?
I can't form an opinion because everything that I've heard could be flushed through facts. I don't have evidence. I have this person's opinion and that person's opinion and the other person's opinion. This network's opinion and that network's opinion, but I don't know a thing until it's established.
after the sort of initial flurry of activity, you sort of had less interest in the case?
I started to get less interest as it got hotter. Yeah.
In the summer?
As people...
The weather?
No.
Oh.
The atmosphere. The political atmosphere. It got very politically charged. That had cooled down over time, but right around the time that Mr. Zimmerman got arrested, and for, I would guess, probably a month afterwards, around here, among people who keep up with the news, it got very politically charged. And that's when I tried to, because everything that I do depends on being able to discuss things with people, have a reasonable relationship with people, where they start forming opinions on both sides and try to drag you to their opinion on anything. It's not just about this case, it's about anything that's political. It could be George Bush, it could be Barack Obama. Any of that can get you in trouble in the lines of, that I'm in.
Do you distance yourself from that ongoing political debate?
I try a lot of times, unless it's lighthearted and people are, able to reasonably handle the discussion. Then I like politics.
The discussions that you've had in person, and I mean that in a general sense, would you have had some face-to-face conversations with people maybe while you were at work?
Mm-hmm.
How about through social media? I think you mentioned Facebook.
Right, yeah.
Do you communicate with a group of friends over Facebook? And some of the discussions that we've talked about here today, are they on Facebook?
Well, there's been some talk of this case among people that I know on Facebook, but that would have been, again, back closer to the time that he was arrested, when there was a lot more electricity in the air about it. A lot of it had cooled down over time.
Are you aware of any websites that have been dedicated for the support of...
No, I just heard of them. No, I wasn't even aware there were such sites.
I was going to ask you that. Well, I'll be more specific. Are you aware of any websites that are dedicated for the support of George Zimmerman?
No.
Are you aware of any websites that were dedicated in support of the prosecution?
No.
Or on behalf of the Martin family?
No, I hadn't even heard of the concept until I believe he mentioned it.
So certainly you've never been on one of those websites or posted a comment or participated in a discussion?
I'm not.
Do you, when you go on, have you gone on to websites and posted comments and actually engaged in the conversation string?
Just where Facebook and all the people that I would know, sometimes, and again, this isn't recent now, this is back then,
right.
People would express their opinion, and I might interject, humor, or I might interject, how do you know? What do you know?
But you've never been on any websites that's dedicated in support of Trayvon Martin or George?
No.
Do you use your real name when you go online?
Yes.
So, if I understand sort of in sum, you have a lot of information about the case, but you haven't formed any opinions one way or the other on Mr. Zimmerman's guilt or innocence?
If you can call the speculation from both sides information.
Here's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what's out there. Whatever it is that's out there.
Yes, I've absorbed a lot, especially back then. There was a lot to absorb.
And after absorbing all of that, you haven't formed any opinions yourself about George Zimmerman's guilt or innocence?
No, because I don't think I have the information to qualify any opinion.
And likewise, you haven't formed any opinions about the appropriateness of the conduct of the Sanford Police Department in whether or not to arrest Mr. Zimmerman?
Correct.
May I have just a moment? On the hardship issue, I know that you've indicated you're both a musician and a painter. Do you have a regular musician job?
No,
Do you have a regular painting job?
no, I'm an independent painter. Things are slow.
So when you say underemployed, you don't have any work at the time? Right now?
I don't have anything booked at the moment. Something could jump off tomorrow.
Are you aware from this information that jurors might be sequestered 4 to 6 weeks?
I'll be fine.
How?
Because I live at a circumstance where rent is not an absolute necessity. I'm not the only one that lives there, and I'm already behind. And the house is fine.
You share a residence with a number of others?
Well, yes, I'm another person, yes.
Have you talked with this person about the case?
No.
Or the idea that you may be on jury duty?
They knew that I'd come in for jury duty.
But if
not
you
what case?
If you were sequestered, do you have other sources of income that would allow you to spend 4 to 6 weeks away?
Well, yeah. See, when I was doing much better, I had the good sense to, for instance, collect guitars. I had a very large and reasonably valuable guitar collection that under these hardship circumstances now I'm able to, I've got 4 of them for sale on Craigslist right now, as a matter of fact. I just sold one last week. I sold another one the week before. At one point I had 125 guitars alone. I got 15,000 watts of PA equipment. I got 3 full sets of drums, 5 keyboards. I mean, you know, I'm okay. Underemployed currently. I'll be all right.
Speaking of PA equipment and such, you reminded me of a question I didn't ask you about. The recordings in the case, can you characterize them for me briefly so I know we're talking about the same ones?
Which recordings?
Recordings connected with this case.
You mean about the alleged screams?
Yes.
What would you like to, as far as characterizations?
Well, you just did, so that's the one I'm talking about. Well, first of all, why do you call them alleged?
Well, because there's allegations that they came from both people. There's allegations. One side says, oh, they came from this guy. Another side says, well, no, they came from, Mr. Zimmerman.
What's your information on that? What draws you to that conclusion?
I haven't formed a conclusion.
Now, how do you know that some people are saying it's Mr. Zimmerman, some people are saying it's
I've
Mr.
heard that on the news. If you turn on Fox News or you turn on MSNBC News, from the time, from before he got arrested, they would have that seemed to be one of those stronger discussions.
Have you been aware of anything recent in the news on that subject within the last couple of years?
Nothing that's any different from the same place we were back then. Without evidence, we don't know who that is.
Are you aware from listening to the news or reading the news, being exposed to the media, about anything in this case that's going on now related to that evidence?
I don't understand the question, I'm sorry.
Are you aware of anything going on in the case right now? Any hearings in the case?
No. Are there hearings afoot now about... I did hear something, last week, 2 weeks ago, before I knew what jury I might be picked for, that there was specialist allegedly that says, and if I'm not mistaken, aren't there specialists for both sides that claim, oh, it's him, no, it's him, and now we're into an argument between specialists? All right, that's the impression I got.
So you're aware there's an issue ongoing in the case about that?
About the voice.
Are you aware of whether that issue is resolved?
To the last I knew, no. There was absolutely no resolution yet. The same as everything else about this case. It's been competing sides. Yeah.
Just 1 minute, James. Thank you.
So remain seated, counsel. When you're ready, please approach. Okay, Okay, Juror E7, I have a question for you. You had indicated that you did some postings on Facebook, and did you post something on March 21st, 2012 under the Coffee Party Progressives? If we showed this
That's
to
possible
you.
because I know they're on my list.
Okay, I'm going to circle
All right.
one and ask you to look at that and ask you if that
Is the date on there as well? Because I don't remember what you just said.
And I don't need an explanation for what's posted. I just want to know if that is in fact your posting.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, that is.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, want to approach? Yeah.
Your Honor, this is E13.
Please be seated and good afternoon. From here on out, you are referred to as Juror E13. The attorneys are going to ask you some questions concerning the questionnaire that you filled out Monday morning, and we're going to begin with Mr. De La Ronda. You may proceed.
Good afternoon, ma'am. We call you E13. You obviously worked out this questionnaire, and that was back on Monday, correct?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to be asking you questions related to what you wrote down here in terms of the publicity aspect. You wrote down you don't know much just from the news and friends that Mr. Zimmerman killed Trayvon and that it's about the only thing I know, or it's the only thing I know. No details. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go back in terms of when you first heard about it on the news. Was it local news or national news?
I think it was just local news. I never really watched the news. It was just my parents had it on the TV, and I just remember like walking by and like seeing pictures. And
Okay.
honestly, I don't really pay attention.
Okay. Was it about the time that it happened back in February of last year?
Yeah.
Okay. And you also mentioned friends. Let's talk about the news right now. Did you, other than that first time when your parents had the news on, did you continue to watch it after that? Whenever it appeared on TV?
Not really. Just if they would have it on and I was sitting there, then yeah, I would watch it. But I never really paid that much attention.
Okay. In terms of what best you could recall regarding what you saw, what do you remember about that was on TV about the case?
The only part that I remember is when it happened, like when they were interviewing him or people from, I think it was like apartments or something, like interviewing people that were around there. I just remember that. And then Trayvon's family, I remember one time they had it on and they were speaking about it, but I don't really.
Do you remember anything about, when you say interviewing him, are you talking about Mr. Zimmerman or somebody else?
No, just like people that live in that complex.
Okay. Do you remember anything about what those people said?
No.
Okay, all right. And how about, you mentioned Mr. Martin's family, do you remember anything about what they said?
I just remember like pictures of him.
Pictures of Trayvon
Yeah.
Martin? Okay. While we're on the subject of pictures, do you remember looking at any other pictures regarding this case? Anything at all?
No, sir.
Okay. The local news that your parents had on the TV, did you do any kind of Facebook or all that stuff, all activities in terms of social media?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember looking at anything online about that?
No, I don't remember anyone on Facebook talking about it, but I do, like some of my friends like brought it up and in a casual conversation.
Sure. Okay. Let's talk about that if we could, because you mentioned friends. Are these close friends or just people from work or combination?
Yeah, just like at work, it was like brought up. And I was just yeah, I think I saw that on TV.
Okay. And was that back last year or is that continued since February of last year till now?
No, that was back.
Okay.
Just like when it was first happened, I
Okay.
guess.
Have you kept up with it at all since you live in Seminole County? Have you kept up with the case at all just because it's been on the news?
No, not really.
Okay, all right. And in terms of your friends, did they express opinions about the case at all?
Yes, and it was kind of, I remember some people talking about it, and it was kind of like diverse.
Okay. Both pro Zimmerman and pro the deceased, Mr. Trayvon Martin? Okay.
Yeah.
Did you express any opinions to those people about what you thought about the case?
No, just
Okay.
because I was just kind of sat back and listened because I don't really, it's bad that I don't really pay attention, but I don't.
Okay. And you mentioned in the questionnaire that you had not formed an opinion about the guilt or innocence of George Zimmerman. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is that still true? Mm-hmm. Okay. And the reason I asked, I know it was Monday, but you've had a little bit of time to talk, not to talk to anybody, I need to clarify that, to think about it maybe, because you're obviously following the court's admonition. If you thought about it some more, is there any doubt in your mind that you can be fair to both sides?
Yeah, just because I don't really know that much information on it.
Okay. Besides Facebook, do you partake in any other social? Do you do twitting or whatever they call that, Twitter? Or?
I have an account, but I never really go on it.
Okay. And any other social media, just Google itself or other types of areas where you can do, as you're going through talking to friends or others, where you may have come across information or media accounts of what happened in court or that stuff?
No.
Okay. Have you followed any of the proceedings in court? Since if it has been on TV, have you followed up or anything about what's happening in court since February till now?
No.
Okay. Did you talk to your parents about it in terms of their opinions about the case or not?
A little bit, but I don't really have time to watch TV and stuff, so.
It's okay. Did they express opinions about the case one way or the other?
No, I just remember when it was on TV, I was just like, what's happening? They just told me what had happened because they were watching it before I came in.
Other than the photos you mentioned of Trayvon Martin, do you remember anything else in terms of evidence that you may have heard about on the media about the case? You know anything at all? No? Okay. And if you, not maybe intentionally, but you're not one of those people that kind of watches TV, the news, or reads the newspaper in terms of what's going on?
No.
Okay. How about, you mentioned in your questionnaire that you're in school.
Mm-hmm.
Have you talked to fellow students about what's going on in terms of the case?
Mm-mm.
Have you no discussions in class, like, whatever classes you take, no discussions about the case at all?
No.
Okay. You got the jury summons. Did you get excited or not?
I was kind of shocked that I got it because my mom, she's only been summoned like once, and I was like, oh wow, I'm only 15.
Okay, all right, okay. So did you do any kind of research at that time and go, I wonder what cases are going on that I might be involved in at all? No?
No.
Okay, all right. And other than what you've notated now and you've told us, you don't remember anything else about the case?
Mm-mm.
Okay, is that correct? You do not?
Yeah, no, I don't.
Okay. No, I know you were shaking your head or nodding, but you need to make sure that the court reporter needs to get an answer from you. And I gather you mentioned that in terms of how long the trial may take. It may take 3 to 4 or 5 weeks. We don't know. It depends on how long it takes to pick a jury. Do you feel that you can set aside that time? I mean, I know it's going to be a hardship. It's a hardship for anybody. But in terms of dedicating and doing your duty as a citizen of this great country, you think you can do that?
Yeah, I went ahead and talked to my manager at my, because I have 2 jobs. But I only put
You have 2
one-
jobs?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, they're understanding because there's really nothing
Okay.
to do that. So.
All right. And, the judge is considering that people may be sequestered of their jurors. You understand that, too. And you're willing to do that if necessary.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything other aspect about the case that comes to mind now other than what you briefly saw on the news and with your parents' house and stuff? Anything else, other aspect about any of the facts of the case or anything related to the case that you've had now a few minutes or hopefully longer from Monday to think about it? Anything that comes to mind about the case that you think it would be important to let us know that you know based on your media?
No,
Nothing comes to mind?
Nothing really comes to mind. No.
Okay, if I may have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
When I talk about evidence, you mentioned photographs, anything else related to the case that you can remember at this time? Because we're not allowed to tell you what the evidence is, we're trying to find out from you what you know or what you remember.
I'm trying to think, it was so long ago.
Well, that's fine.
I was it was just like that one day that I was watching the news with them. I just remember them interviewing the people from the apartment complex, saying like if they heard something or.
Nothing else comes to mind in terms of the case? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lamar.
Thank you. Good afternoon. At all nervous in here?
Yeah, a little bit.
All right. It's actually more friendly and less formal than you might think, so just take a breath, relax a little bit. I'm just going to talk for a few minutes. Okay?
Okay.
Do you know even why we're talking to you at this stage? It's really just to find out what you know about the case before you come in. We call it pretrial publicity. Just trying to find out what you know, because it's certainly okay to know stuff about the case. Mm-hmm. We just need to know what you know so that we can talk about it, sort of get it out on the table.
Yeah.
So that's what my questions are going to be talking about. All right?
Okay.
And that's what Mr. De Leon was trying to get to, just to see if you had particular focus of anything. And you mentioned, for example, that you've seen some pictures. Mm-hmm. I want you to sort of think back. It sounds like it was about a year or so back. Okay. Just try and think back and tell me what the pictures were of.
Like with Trayvon, I remember just pictures of him, like saying, I'm trying to remember, just like family saying he was a good kid and stuff like that. And I remember just seeing his face on TV.
Let's talk about the pictures of Trayvon Martin for a minute. Do you remember how many of them you saw?
It was just a few, like 3 or 4.
And that was on TV, or? Mm-hmm. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you recall whether or not any of that was on the internet?
I think like one, because you know how like on Facebook they have like the little pop-up ads. I think there was like one about it. It was just like with the news.
Okay. And do you recall what that pop-up was about?
No, I just saw a picture.
Okay. Anything else about those pictures that you believe was notable?
No.
Moving then forward over the past year or so since then, what other pictures have you seen of Trayvon Martin?
None really.
Ever see anything on TV or, again, internet or on Facebook?
Not really anymore. It was more like when it first happened that I guess maybe I have, but I didn't really pay attention to it because it's just when it first happened and I heard what happened that I noticed it, I guess.
What was it that you first heard happened?
Just that there was a shooting and it was kind of, I guess, like a racial thing.
Okay. Tell me more about what you heard about it being a racial thing.
Just because, because of the family when they were talking about it, just because since he is black, I guess that was basically it.
Okay. Did you form any impression, having heard from the family? Am I saying it right if I say to you that the family thought it was a racial thing? Is that what you're saying to me?
Yeah, I guess so.
Did you form any impression from the belief that the family thought it was a racial thing?
Not really. Just, a lot of people still think, like, there's a lot of race stuff, I guess, still going on, but I have, like, a brother he's black, so I don't really see the difference.
So you didn't see it as much as a racial thing back then?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know anything that happened, but...
Okay. Having heard that from the family, though, did that give you any impression or any opinion that it was race-based or a racial event?
Not really. Just, I mean, even people, if you like call someone black, just people automatically will think it's racism sometimes. So
Simply by noticing a person's race might suggest that
Yeah.
you're being racist. Based upon any of the information from the media, do you believe now that George acted in a racist way?
I mean, I don't really know.
Okay. And I'm not asking as much for your personal opinion of that. That's not what we're looking for. But based upon the media or whatever exposure you've had, since we're talking about the impact of race, it might play some part in people's perspective of this, whether or not, because of your exposure to that, if you have any opinion concerning whether or not George acted in a racial or racist way.
Objection, Your Honor. Been asked and answered.
Justice,
I was
may answer the question.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't really have an opinion because I don't really know what happened or the circumstance, so it's kind of hard to say what I feel from the media, especially since I never really pay attention that much to it. Just like 2 times that I saw it.
Sounds good. And that was a bit informal a moment ago. I just want to be clear when we're talking about Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman. We'll use those names. Is that okay?
Yeah.
You said you had seen a picture of George Zimmerman as well. Mm-hmm. Tell me what you remember of that.
It was just like a picture of his face.
Okay. Can you describe it?
He was just sitting there and didn't really have an expression on his face. I don't know.
Okay. Did it seem to be sort of a casual family photograph or more of a business photograph or anything, any category you can tell me of?
I guess business. It was just his face.
Okay. Anything else that you remember about that photograph?
Mm-hmm.
Since that point until today, when you may have seen him down at the jury room, probably on Monday, had you ever seen George Zimmerman or seen pictures of him in between those 2 times? The first time you saw a picture and Monday?
No, just if it would, like, just the few times I saw on the news when it first happened. So like, he looked familiar when he walked in, and then it kind of clicked.
Okay. Did seeing him Monday bring back any other memories of other times you had seen him, either on TV or pictures of him on TV or on the internet?
No.
And tell me a bit more about what, if any, interaction you had with friends of yours regarding this case.
It was just at work. It got brought up. Oh, did you hear what happened? Did you see on the news last night? Just kind of casually, oh yeah, I saw that.
Tell me if any opinions or comments that friends of yours made to you about this case.
Honestly, I haven't really talked that much to friends, just acknowledging that we heard what happened.
Okay. Did any of those friends of yours seem to have a perspective favorable to one side or the other?
Yeah. It was diverse. Like at one job, they were talking about it, and I mean, everyone has different opinions.
Sure. Tell me which side of the fence, we'll call it, that those opinions were on.
It was like kind of split down the middle with people that, I mean, I didn't talk to that many people about it, but the few that were talking about it around me, it was kind of like back and forth.
Okay. And tell me the different arguments, like when we say one side of the fence or the other, define both sides of the fence for me.
Like, oh, he looks like a nice guy, he probably was just this, and this person.
I'm sorry.
George Zimmerman, sorry.
Okay.
And that's basically it. Just based on looks and stuff, people were saying.
Okay. If you serve as a juror on the case, the judge will instruct you that whatever you might remember from Facebook or the media, papers, friends, comments, or anything else that might even come to your mind has to be left outside the courtroom, and that you can only make your decision upon what you hear in this courtroom from the witness stand or by looking at evidence. Would you have any concern being able to keep whatever you heard before about this case outside of the courtroom?
No.
Do you think you have any problem doing that?
No.
The question, I guess, is has the media influence on you caused you to form an opinion strong enough where if you were to have it, you couldn't set it aside?
Yeah, no, I don't really have one.
Okay. And if something does come to mind, since we won't have this conversation again, if something comes to mind, can you assure us that you're not going to allow anything that you heard outside the courtroom to affect your ability to decide on the facts of the case?
Yeah.
And if some other juror were to suggest information from outside the courtroom, how would you address that?
Probably just sit and not pay attention, kind of block it out, I guess.
Okay. Just 1 minute, if you mind. And if I were to ask you to quantify, with the agreement, I'm not going to ask you about them individually, but just quantify how many times you've heard about this case or talked to other people about it since the first time you did, what type of an estimate would you give me?
Like 3 or 4, maybe. Times.
3 or 4 times?
Yeah.
Okay. Seems low, but that's about the only times you've heard about this.
I'm trying to think. It was so. I just
It's not
remember
a challenge, I'm just curious.
just from the news and then work and a friend. So.
Okay. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You'll just take a moment and council approach when you're ready.
Your Honor, this is E28.
Please be seated. Good afternoon. We're going to refer to you as Juror E28, and the attorneys are going to ask you questions about your answers to the questionnaire you filled out on Monday morning, and we're going to begin with Mr. De La Ronda.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
You obviously remember filling out the
Yes, I
questionnaire.
do.
Okay, we're going to ask you some questions about
Okay.
the publicity aspect of it. From what I can read here, you said that you got the source of your information was from the news,
Yes,
and that you understand, as best you can recall in terms of what you heard, that there was an altercation between Trayvon Martin, between them and Trayvon Martin was shot and killed.
yes.
Okay. In terms of the news that you would have had this exposure from, was it local news or national news?
Local news.
Okay. And you recall what TV station?
No.
Okay. Was it at the time, about the time that it occurred back in February of last
Yes.
year, or was it more recently?
Back in February.
And how about the newspaper at all, just the media,
No.
the TV station itself?
Quite honestly, I don't read the newspaper.
Okay. Did you do any on the internet research or review, or do you partake in Facebook and all those
No,
other
I
types
do
of-
not. It's very old school. I do not have a Facebook page.
Okay. So you didn't go on Google and research the case
No,
at
I
all?
did not.
Okay. Now let's talk about the TV exposure that you would have been, or the TV accounts of what happened that you would have been exposed to. You mentioned around the time it happened. Did you see it any other time other than back in February or March of last year?
Not that I can remember.
Okay. Are you a regular TV watcher in terms of the news, like the evening news or morning
No,
news?
not so much the news because I work
Okay.
odd hours and
Okay.
I don't usually have time to watch
Okay.
the news.
So your exposure would have been very limited in
Yes.
terms of what you recall. Based on that limited exposure on the news TV station, what do you recall hearing
or seen on TV about the case?
Just what I stated.
That's it?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall looking at any photographs or listening to anything that about the case?
No, I did not. No, I did not.
You got the subpoena, the
Yes.
summons to come to court
Yes.
about 3-4 weeks ago. Did you think, oh, let me see what cases are going on? Did that pique your interest in terms of...
It just so happened that afternoon my daughter had watched TV and said, oh, they're sending out jury summons for the George Zimmerman case. And lo and behold, my husband goes out and gets the mail, and there's my summons.
It was your lucky day.
It was, yes.
Okay. Based on that, did you then start looking at the case
No,
to see
I
what
did
had kept up?
No, I did not.
And
Honestly, did not.
Okay, you on purpose, and obviously
Yes.
you have followed the judge's admonitions about
Yes.
not reading anything. What I wanted to know from you is, Monday morning you filled out the questionnaire, you listened to the judge's admonitions about not reading or watching anything or talking to anybody about the
Yes.
case. But did you internally go back and say, oh, is there anything else that I forgot to mention in this questionnaire that maybe I should have? Is anything came to mind in terms of...
No.
Okay. And I gather, and based on your response here to the questionnaire, you did not form opinions
No,
on
I
the
have
case as
not.
to the guilt or innocence of the defendant.
No, I
Is that
honestly
correct?
have not. That's
Okay.
correct.
So you can agree to keep an open mind and make your decision only on what happens in the courtroom?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Now, sometimes when jurors are picked, they sit there and listen to all the evidence, and then they seem to remember something else that they may have seen on TV or have some comments from people, which is normal. I'll wait a second. Sorry. And sometimes you'll remember things that were in the news that you had forgotten about. My question is, if that were to occur, you were picked as a juror and you listened to the evidence, and I'm going to bring up something that's not related to this case because we can't talk about the facts. Let's say that it was crucial in terms of what kind of car was out there in the case. And the witness testified it was a blue car. And then you remember on the news hearing that it was a red car. You understand that you can't rely on what you heard on the news.
Yes.
You have to rely on what happened.
Yes.
Okay. Any
Exactly.
question about that at all?
No, sir.
Okay. And finally, ma'am, did you have any discussions with anybody, family members or friends about the case?
No, I have not.
That they would
Purposely.
tell you, no, I'm talking about not recently, I'm talking about
Yes.
back to...
Oh, no.
Nobody talked to you about the case or what was going on? Okay. Anything else related to the case that you can think of now that you may have heard from family, friends, or the media that you think would be important for us to know at this time so that we could question you about it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if I could have a vote here on it. Any specific evidence that you recall watching on TV about the case? You know, photographs, anything else regarding the case? Nothing?
Nothing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Malley, or Mr. West.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You've made it near the end of the day. Day 3 for
Three.
you?
Yes, day 3.
Okay. Was there any time over the last 14, 15 months where you paid more attention to the news than others? If you work odd hours, which means...
Yes, I do. I work 7 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon. And then I usually go to the gym for an hour or so after. So I watch a lot of Law and Order and shows like that, but I usually don't watch the news much. I hear it a little bit in the morning when I get up and drive to work. But
Do you work at the same place every day?
yes, yes,
I was going to ask you about the commute, if you listen to the radio.
yes, I do.
Both ways?
Yes.
And about how long is the commute?
About 15, 20 minutes.
What kinds of stations do you listen to?
Well, we listen to, my husband drives me to work, I listen to usually WDBO until 6, and then his sports station comes on.
I see you don't control the radio?
Yes.
So WDBO
Yes.
until 6 a.m.
Yes.
And how long is that?
Probably to WDBO maybe 10 minutes, and then probably 10 minutes of, so it's pretty equal.
And then shifts over to a sports program?
Yes.
Is it a talk?
Yes, it's that, the guy who does the writing for the Sentinel, Mike Bianchi, I think it is Mike, yeah. Yes.
So it doesn't sound like you have a lot of time going to work anyway to hear about this or any other case.
No.
Do you remember anything you've heard on the radio about this case?
Nothing in particular.
Does your husband chauffeur you home as well?
No, I ride home with a friend of mine, and she listens to music, so she doesn't listen to anything.
So there's even less
Yes.
news on the
Yes.
way home. And I understand you say your routine is such that you don't go home and watch the news
No,
specifically.
I do not.
Do you ever read the newspaper at work in a break?
No, we don't get the newspaper anymore at work, so I don't have any occasion other than the Sunday newspaper, and that's usually for the ads. I get that occasionally, but that's, I do not read the newspaper.
How about you work in the ER?
OR.
OR.
Operating room, yes.
Yes. Do you ever have downtime where you'd sit around and talk with coworkers about current events and such?
Yes, I do.
Do you remember if this case has ever been the subject of a conversation?
Not really. I don't remember anything, no.
Is there anything in your mind that sticks out or stands out about this case? Any fact or image or question that you have about what happened?
No.
When you got the summons, 4 weeks ago? And you realized,
Yes.
was it, oh no, or oh
No, it was
great?
like, oh, how interesting. It was pretty much, oh, great, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I was excited about it.
And as a result of that, did you talk with, I think you said one child?
I have two.
Two children.
They are almost 27 and 23.
Mm-hmm.
No, they were just kidding me about it, but that was all. It was nothing. No, we didn't
You didn't say
speak
what's,
of any of the facts or anything. No.
you didn't say what's that case, and
No.
they proceed to tell you what they knew?
No. We all knew what it was.
And your husband, did he
Yes.
talk with you about anything he'd heard about the case?
No, he did not.
Offer any opinions
No,
about
he
whether
didn't.
he thought Mr. Zimmerman was guilty or not?
No, he did not.
Offer any opinions as to who started whatever happened?
No.
Is there anything that you've learned in the news that's been described about the events of February 26th that you're wondering about if they're true or not?
No.
Have you heard any recordings or parts of any recordings connected with the case?
I don't remember. I don't believe so. Since we've been told not to listen, I think one was trying to come on the radio, and I turned the radio off so I wouldn't hear the tape recording, so I didn't listen to it.
Are you talking about just since Monday?
Yes, yes.
I see.
Yes.
And before Monday,
No,
were you
I did
aware
not.
of any
I knew there was a recording, but I had not heard it.
had you heard any news about what the recording may have pertained
No.
to? Any such thing?
No.
Have you been exposed to any discussion of the case at church or any social organization you may
No.
belong to?
No.
Are you aware of any decisions the court may have made in the case?
No, I have not.
Have you heard anything good or bad about Mr. Zimmerman?
No, I haven't.
The purpose of this part is pretty limited just to what you've heard and talked about. So there may be other matters that we'll talk about at another time. But is there anything else about the publicity, the media discussion that you can remember about the facts of the case, or anything that caught your attention that made you have an impression about one way or another?
That's right.
And we're about at the end of the day as well. Since you've been here, 3 days now, have you heard any of the other jurors talking about the case?
No.
And you haven't had any
No.
conversations with anybody else? Okay. Let me have just one moment.
Sure.
One minor thing. Well, I'm sure you've heard that before in the OR. Just one minor.
Just yes, for a minute, yes.
Just the surgery, whether it's minor or major, depends on who's had it.
It's always minor. I mean, it's always major, especially with jurors.
Exactly right. So, one of the questions deals with the category of hardship.
Yes.
I know you work a lot, and if you were on the jury, you may not be able to work at all for 4 to 6 weeks, ballpark. Would that cause particular distress or concern?
No, it would not. It would not.
Your children are plenty old
They're
enough.
plenty old enough. Unfortunately, they still live at home, but yes, they can fend for themselves. Yes.
You may need the vacation.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For just one moment, and council will approach when you're ready. Okay, court is going to be in recess until 9 a.m.